So anyway, take us down this rabbit hole and let's educate the people on the clear and present danger that exists with the fact that we do not have a just justice system.
Correct. The simplest way for people to understand this is that everything that's going on in this court systems that we see worldwide, it's all constructive fraud. They are not courts of law. They are legal proceedings. And the first thing you need to understand is that legal does not apply to a man or a woman. Legal applies to that which is incorporated. And you go, well, what are you talking about, Chris? Well, when we're born in a hospital, not birthed, right? That's why you're given a birth certificate. And if you go on my website, I've got 3 foundational knowledge videos, and it walks everybody through what happens. That trespass, that's why this is so huge, this truth, Hugo, because this one truth can save our world. The main enemy that we all have right now in this world is ignorance. We've not been taught the difference between legal and lawful. We don't understand who we are. And, I can jump back, we'll jump around a lot here. I'm pretty sure your audience can follow along here. When you were speaking a moment ago about this man who is acting as a judge, first and foremost, people need to understand something. All these people that wear these black robes, they're your fellow man or woman. They're acting for service corporations. They have no jurisdiction over a man or a woman, right? You have to understand that. The hierarchy goes, God created man and woman, or whether you believe in God or not, man and woman came into this world, right? And then as man and woman, we are the creators. We went and created governments, and all governments were created to protect the property of man. We, the people, created police, judges, courts, all these things. So when you enter these public courthouses, they do not want to see or recognize you as a man or a woman. All they want to see is the legal fiction that was created, and that's what they want to cloak you in when you walk in. That's why the word person is a trick word. So if you go, like I said, when you go to my website, you'll see the documentation. When I was born in a hospital, they took that hospital record that the nurses and the doctors and all fill out, and they're not trained. They don't understand what they're doing, but they're indoctrinated to write your name in all capital letters. And anytime something is capitalized, Hugo, that means that a corporation, diminished Caputo, which is in Roman Latin law, it says, it's through the diminishing, through the use of capitalization, it diminishes the capacity of a man or woman to that of a person. Now we can jump to the Bible. I'm not a religious guy or whatever, but I'm very spiritual. I know there's my creator out there. The most powerful sentence that's in the Bible for me is Job 32:21. And it simply states, I pray ye not, you accept any person. See? A person is a legal construct. That's what happens when you're born in a hospital. They create a legal person. That's what the birth certificate represents. The birth certificate that I show on my website that I was given, when I was older enough to see it, my mother and father received it like 6 weeks after I was born in a hospital. Well, on the bottom of that birth certificate, it says Canadian banknote. Huh? And my name's in all capital letters. See, there you, capitis diminutio, when you recognize, as soon as you see any name that's been capitalized, it's diminished that, especially for a man or woman, you've been diminished in law to that of a legal fiction, a person. And all these legal courts are inferior courts. That means they're below the court of a man or woman. We are the highest creators in this world. So it's really simple. When we're walking into these courts, when this judge was saying to you, I'm going to find you in contempt in court. Well, you always challenge jurisdiction and you put it in writing ahead of time. You want to know who is the man or woman that's moving this court against me. And secondly, I require, which means demand, the verified claim of trespass. That's why it's in the Bible. You do not trespass against your fellow man or woman. Trespass applies to everything. Breach of contract, you cause wrong or harm, you do damage to property. You only have to use that word trespass, but identify it after you put that into the court. So you require that court to produce the verified claim of trespass, that you've caused wrong or harm, or someone's claiming, like, for example, the IRS or the CRA. I help people with taxation. Who's claiming that this debt be due, true, or past due? Because contract makes the law, Hugo, and 99.9% of the time, there's no contract. I don't have a contract with the CRA, which is the Canadian Revenue Agency. I haven't paid any taxation, which is theft, since 1998. I did general contracting for a little over 20 years as well after I got out of the studio business. So I was self-employed all these years, and then it was through this process I started to look into all this. I'm going, what is all this taxation about? And then we can do a whole show separately on taxation for understanding how the money goes to the Vatican, and then it goes back to England where all this corruption began from. But at the end of the day, people, I want them to take away from this conversation we have here today is, number one, legal does not apply to a man or woman, only lawful. You must know who you are. First, you must know who you are not. So when you're born in a hospital, Every government is what? This is another key, huge word you've got to get in your heart, your mind, and soul. Every government around the world, be it at the municipal level, state or provincial level, or at the federal level, what are they? They're service corporations. Canada. Canada is a service corporation. The provincial territory I live in, known as Ontario. Yes, the landmass is known as Ontario, but there's a service corporation called the Ontario government. Do I have a contract with that? Any of those people at that? Take Ontario out of the way, or Canada, and put Burger King and McDonald's. Can Burger King and McDonald's go and create laws, codes, rules, or statutes, and then come out into the public and say, hey, Bob or Susie, you're not following our codes, rules, or statutes or bylaws. We're going to fine you. We're going to bring you into court and hold you accountable to this. You go, that's ridiculous. I have nothing to do with McDonald's or Burger King. I don't have a contract with any of you people. And then this is the big shoe to drop. These are the three most powerful questions you always ask any man or woman that's trying to use paperwork to control you, to get jurisdiction over you. You say, do you claim I property? Do you have a contract with me on the private side that I'm property to the man or woman? Or do you have a contract with the service corporation that you're acting through right now with this paperwork that I'm property with my wet signature? When they answer no to those three questions, Hugo, this is synonymous worldwide. This is the foundational conversation we all need to have. People might listen to this and they go, oh, this is pretty simple stuff, Chris. That's right. It is, but we've never had this correct conversation. No man or woman that answers no to all three of those questions has any jurisdiction over you. It doesn't matter what role they're acting in. They can be the president of the United States. They can be a janitor in a high school. It does not matter. Words on a piece of paper do not control a man or woman. Only contract. Contract makes the law. And that's how you take down the bar and their private society, because they're moving all their courts under constructive fraud. They're bringing you in. If you look at any court filing, that's why it's a complaint that they file, right? They're complaints. Well, in common law, and people say, well, what's common law, Chris? Well, the word law is just not a pretty word. The word stands for the three jurisdictions in this world: land, air, and water. Okay? The bar is operating in the jurisdiction of the sea, admiralty law, maritime law, right? It's contract law. We, the people, the highest law, we're acting on the land. That is common. You say, well, geez, Chris, I don't have time to learn common law. There's so much to learn about law. No, there's not. It's very, very simple. Common law is that which is common to your fellow man or woman. You don't trespass, you don't cause wrong or harm, and contract makes the law. It's that simple. So when somebody out in the public trespasses against Hugo or Christopher, we try and settle it with them honorably on the private side. Say, hey, look, Bob, you trespassed here, you damaged my property, you hit my car, or whatever, you're in breach of contract. Let's try and settle this on the private side. When they don't do that, then Hugo and Christopher have that right to access that public courthouse outside of a criminal organization called the bar, and we are allowed to move our claim. It's our God-given right to move our claim in court before a jury of our peers. And this is where the rubber hits the road at the courthouse, because when you go in, I've established probably about half a dozen or more common law courts over the last 7 years. What has happened is that as soon as I've got it established, these people acting for a private society called the bar, wearing the black robes, they come along and they say, your paperwork isn't moving under the rules of civil procedure. So then they throw it out. This is especially when you're going after these people, these lawyers, these judges, because nobody's above the law. They throw it out and they don't give you access to that courthouse. And the police as well, they're ignorant as hell. They don't know the difference between legal and lawful. That's why we go back to, what does legal apply to? That which is incorporated. You go, that which is incorporated. Yep. That's the trespass that occurs when we're born in a hospital, not birth. That birth certificate is evidence that you've been trespassed against, and a legal fiction that's called personage has been created when you're born. That is what all these service corporations, governments, use against us, Hugo, to interact with for commerce. Go look at your bank account, go look at your driver license, go look at, again, you don't need a driver's license in this world, only a man or woman that's doing commerce on the highway. Simple things to understand. No man or woman needs a license to go from point A to point B on a public road with your property. Where the law comes in is that if you get in an accident, and if it was your fault, then you've got to settle it. You've got to make that man or woman whole. But where this third party comes in policing, they start saying, well, you're not moving under the Highway Traffic Act. That's what they have here in Canada, the United States. That's the act, right? One of these codes, statutes, rules, acts. Well, you simply go back to my three questions, right? Who wrote that act, right? It's a man or a woman, right? Your fellow man or woman. That's right. Are they acting for the service corporation? In this case, it'd be the Ontario, which is the government of Ontario, Highway and Traffic Act. Yeah, it's people that were acting with titles. Remember, Job 32:21, I pray not you accept any persons, nor are you to accept any titles. Well, a man or woman acting for the service corporation with the title legislator, they got together and they wrote all this documentation. That's fine. What does that have to do with I, a man, or any other woman out there? Nothing.
And now you seem okay. For a second there, whatever you were saying was so incendiary that the CIA and ADL, which listens to this show, probably didn't want you saying it. So you were cut off when you were raising your hand like this and saying something. I don't know if you can just kind of repeat what you just said.
I don't kind of remember, but I was probably just saying, it's very simple. Is that
You were
when you're
talking about when you were driving, they said that you were driving without a license and you were violating the act. And then you said act, and then you went like this, and they said they don't want you to know that. So
Gotcha. So what they don't want you to realize is that as we go back to this is how simple this is. You go, once you get this in your heart, your minds, and soul, those 3 questions on property, right? Who claims I'm property? Who has a contract with me on the private side as a man or woman that I'm their property? Or who acting in any role has got a contract with me that I'm property? Those 3 questions are powerful because anytime any piece of paper, with whether it's called the Highway Traffic Act, whether it's called codes, rules, or statutes, bylaws, mandates, emergency orders, whatever, who wrote that, right? Someone's got to come forward that wrote that words on those pieces of paper, and they've got to answer yes to one of those 3 questions in order for any of those words on that paper to apply to you. That's why you don't require a license. No man or woman requires a license to go from point A to point B in their property, right? Again, you're not driving. Driving is a commercial term. This is why people have to learn the power of the words that they use. And it's only a handful of them. You're traveling, right? So I haven't had a driver license since 1998, I think, right? And 2003, I hung it all up once I started to learn all this stuff. Have I been pulled over? Oh, absolutely, right? Before they used to try and fine me, I never paid any of the fines, and now they just leave me alone because I beat them so many times in court. I'm always making a special appearance if I go to that court. I'm always requiring them to produce the verified contract they rely upon because there's some ticket, some guy that acting for another service corporation, police, right, at the side of the road tried to engage in a contract with me. His ignorance of the law, he's not a lawyer. He doesn't know law. He's just carrying out government policy. Remember, I had a lot of police officers up here in Canada when this COVID-19 lie was going through. There was a liar, named Rocco Galante, and he was working on behalf of all the police. And he was basically, because they were trying to force the mask mandates on them, he was putting paperwork and that together, and he said to them, I need about $1 million to do this, to fight back for you. And, he's getting, between $1,500 and $2,000 per, man or woman that's acting for the Toronto Police, for example. Well, when I held a large Zoom call with about 40 or 50 police officers, the light went on with all of them because the word police is actually policy. Right? That's what it stands for. And then they never were taught, well, why do we always write people's names in capital letters on the ticket? See, that's that corporation that was created. He who creates owns and controls. So they're trying to engage you. They're trying to get you to contract with them on the side of the road that you are this legal person and you are operating under a license. Whenever I get pulled over, I hand them the ID that I make, and I show people this on my website. This is all from the original hospital record that I've got. They're blocking people now from getting this record, Hugo, in Canada now, because they know the gig's up, right? They're all being exposed for what's going on. Same with taxation. So when I get a ticket, I just simply hand them my correct ID that's notarized, and it says, good day. It says, just for the record, I'm not operating under a license at this time. And when I give them my ID, if they go back and they write my name in all capital letters, or even if they write it in upper and lowercase, like is on my correct ID that's notarized, they're still going to want to put that driver's license that they have in their system from years ago that I had there. As soon as they do that, it's called putting a forged instrument into the public. He's committing fraud on the side of the highway because I never gave him a driver's license. I told him I wasn't operating under a license. And as soon as you draw them out on that, before you go into court, traffic court, you always, always, always have to put things in writing to who's ever moving it 3 times ahead of time. And you require them, hey, I'm honorably going to make an appearance here this day, a special appearance, but there's a presumption to jurisdiction here. That means control. I require the contract relied upon that a debt be due, true, or past due, or I rely the verified claim that I trespass causing wrong or harm. Where is it? Right? Who's moving this court against me? When you're in traffic court, if you get pulled over by the local police, who's moving the court? Well, it's the municipality. The municipality's got their little maggot lawyers that move the court on their behalf. Okay, have I got a contract with the city of Burlington that I live with? No. Have I caused wrong or harmed any man or woman? No. Well, then who's moving this court? You cannot establish a court unless there's a verified claim of trespass, meaning you're in breach of a contract or you've caused wrong or harm or damage to property. Where is it? See, it never exists. And that stuff all disappears really quickly. Once you get it, 3 communications notices to people saying, I require you to produce this evidence that a debt be due, true, or past due, kind regards, Christopher, and they don't produce it after 3 times, what we have in place, Hugo, is called a tacit agreement. Now, that's a legal term. I usually don't delve into the legal side, but I use that against them. I say, okay, Bob or Susie, I've written to you 3 times now. You've not produced the verified claim to jurisdiction, which means they've got some claim of trespass or contract, which means you're committing fraud here. Now, if I have to come to this courthouse on this day, you're going to be contracting with me, and my trespass fine is $10,000 to show up, right, to deal with this corruption before the courts. Something simple like that. And I send it to them. Usually what happens 9 times out of 10, they stop it before it goes to court because they don't have a contract. They have no jurisdiction. The guy that's moving the court, he's moving it on behalf of a service corporation. Okay, I get that. Did I trespass against him and cause him wrong or harm? Nope. Okay. Then all that leaves is who is he representing? Well, he's not representing a who. He's representing a what. Only a man or woman or the people is a who. Remember that. The word person, citizen, resident, anything other than the word man, woman, or people is a legal construct, and you never allow those words to be placed or used against you. Are you a taxpayer, Christopher? Are you a driver? Are you a defendant? No, you're none of these things. You always access that court in the capacity of a man or a woman, and you stand on that square. Because when I go into these courthouses, Hugo, back in the day when I did, I find out the name of that man or woman wearing the black robe. And I would call them by their first name when I would go, and I go, listen, Bob. I said, I'm here by special appearance. You got my paperwork ahead of time, and they kind of get a little bit flustered, right? Because once you do those 3 notices to them and you get that tacit agreement together, before you go to court, if you've got to go to court, you take that now, that 4 pages, and you file that into their court case. Why? So when the man or woman wearing the black robe opens up that court case file that morning, your documentation is right there, those notices with tacit agreement. That's very powerful. And you're telling them that I'm here by special appearance to make one last appearance. I've told Bob over here and Susie, they better produce that verified claim, or here's my appearance fee today, right? And when they don't produce that verified claim of trespass or contract, they have now contract. It's no different if Hugo puts a fence up around his house, right? And all that lovely artwork you got behind you there, and you've got a big sign that says, do not trespass, right? Trespassing is $1 million. Well, that applies to every individual picture that you have there. Someone jumps over the fence at Hugo's place. Someone comes and takes your picture, your property, without paying for it, and they leave. What's going to happen when Hugo takes that to court? You're going to mop the floor with those people because you had posted out their signs, $1 million if anybody comes over this fence and administrates my property without right, stealing it, in other words, right? Anybody in the legal world or lawful world, you'd win that in a heartbeat. Well, this is no difference when you send them in that tacit agreement, the notice of trespass. If you trespass against me, that's like that sign that's out in front of your house. Here's my trespass fine. No different when you see in an elevator, it's a $5,000 fine for smoking, or, if you cross this property, it's $25,000. You can set whatever fine you want. It's your property. Nobody can administrate it without right. Your flesh and blood, Hugo, is your property. So this is where that word property, it's the 3 powerful words I teach: property, trespass, and who. Once you master those 3 words, you can mop the floor with any of these people in these courts, because that man or woman wearing that black robe, they're your public servant, and they don't want you to know that. They're acting in a role on behalf of a service corporation. And the minute that not only they act in a role, or any man or woman in this world, Hugo, what do they have? They've got duties and obligations. What don't they have? Rights. Only a man or a woman has rights in this world in law. When you're acting in a role, you've got duties and obligations. And duties and obligations, Hugo, do not trump the rights of a man or woman. See how simple that is? If our world, Hugo, right now, which needs it more than ever, has this very simple, basic conversation, we understand the difference between legal and lawful. We understand the difference what this corporation, this bar, this private member society that's committing massive corruption and terrorist actions. That's what they're doing. They're terrorizing people in the courts. If people understand how we access this courthouse properly outside of that society, because I went right up the chain of command here in Canada, the rules of civil procedure, right? That's what they use in all the courts around the world. They might call it a little bit different name, but that's what the bar is moving under. You go back to my 3 questions again, Hugo. It's very simple. Who wrote that rules of civil procedure? Are they going to come forward and say that I'm property? They got a contract with me on the private side on property, or contract with the service corporation they were acting through when they wrote that rules of civil procedure? No, no, and no. So what does that mean, Hugo? And to everybody listening, those words on that piece of paper don't apply to any man or woman. That's what they use to get jurisdiction over us, control over us. It's ignorance is our enemy in the courtrooms. And I've taught people this very simply, and people are finally pushing back and fighting back. But the big thing that we're obviously here for today, for me, that has been the pinnacle now of my life, is that like I said, I didn't thought I planned to be in this position, but I'm the only man in the world right now that has brought this forward very simply and powerfully for people to understand. And it's finally starting to catch ground. I've got a large group in Switzerland now that's reached out to me. I just put up an emergency transmission of what they've proven is being sprayed, a 22-month study with the chemtrails that's going on. That's also going to be tying into, they're filing their complaint today, but we're going to talk about the law side with them later this week. The other thing that's gone down, the big one, is that COVID-19, this global pandemic, was a lie. COVID-19 was never isolated or purified. That's not Christopher just speaking out of the side of his ass. We've got almost 230 FOIs from around the world requiring from the CDC, the FDA, Health Canada, everywhere, Britain, everywhere, produce the verifiable evidence where COVID-19 was isolated, purified. Christine Massey, who I work with here in Canada here, incredible woman, incredible. She's led the charge on this. So we've been using this right now to wake people up, to show them that we've all been lied to and that we've got genocide going on right now. And we've got these members from a private society called the Bar that have been blocking this truth and many other enormous truths from getting into the courthouse, because these courthouses are private courthouses. Like when you go into, like in where I live in Ontario, the provincial territory, you go into the Ontario Superior Court or the Ontario Provincial Court. So that's how it's simple for people. Take the word Ontario out of the way and put McDonald's or Burger King, because it's a corporation too. If you were going into McDonald's courts, would you abide by their policies or their rules or whatever corporate? No, you wouldn't. You say, hey, this is a public courthouse. I'm moving my claim in court here against Bob or Susie that have trespassed against me. Seat a jury of my peers and let me lay my claim before the jury. And this is how simple it is. People say, well, I don't understand law, Christopher. What makes law, Hugo, is the truth. So if I come into court and I have the evidence that say Hugo trespassed against me, I tried to settle it with him on the private side. Here's a picture of him smashing into my car or whatever, something like that, right? I present that evidence, and then you've got your time now to produce the evidence counter to my claim. Well, when that jury sees that my claim is sound and it be true, and they put the verdict down that my claim be true and that I'm to be fairly and justly compensated now, that truth makes the law. Truth always makes the law in the court. You don't have to look for something on a piece of paper that says, oh, this is the law here. No, no, no. The law is if you trespass against a man or woman, you're going to be held accountable if you don't make them right. And it is that simple. See, once we get this bar out of the way and these maggots, I've had so many of these people wearing the black robes run from the bench. It's not funny. Why? Because they can't get jurisdiction over me, right? And that's what I wish, nothing more for my fellow man or woman. This bar is a criminal organization. It must be liquidated worldwide. We must restore all our, Switzerland isn't a common law country. I don't believe Georgia, where you are, is a common law country either, but the common law countries that still remain in this world, they are truly the law of the land for man. And that's why in North America, there's a huge uprising that's coming out now in England, in United States, in Canada, in Ireland and Scotland, around the world. People that have these common law countries are finally recognizing this massive corruption that's going on, and we all see the way to change it, because there's great people, Hugo, that are in law enforcement. There really are, but their ignorance is unacceptable right now. Can you imagine a guy walking around with a gun? He doesn't understand the difference between legal and lawful, right? And he's being told what he has to do. That's why they've been militarized, all these police around the world. They're not protecting and serving the people. They're protecting and serving the corporations in which they're all acting for. So this is what we're faced at right now. My focus in this world is I'm bringing it to the forefront that COVID-19 was a lie. It goes synonymous with the biggest trespass that's ever occurred against all of us in this world is when we're born. When that legal person is created unbeknownst to us, then that legal person is what's used to control us, unbeknownst to us, by the service corporations, government that created it. Once you understand this, it's very, very powerful. And the bar, pardon my language, is shitting a pickle right now because they're being exposed worldwide, Hugo, to this massive theft and destruction that they're involved in. I had Health Canada come after me. I've got this incredible product. This is why they're attacking. It's called Masterpiece. And I'll give the link for everybody, if people, they can order it from anywhere around the world. This is incredible timing for you, because we're actually bringing out the 120-day study. The second one, I'm releasing the data on Thursday this week. I'm doing the interview on Wednesday, and it is off the charts. This is a natural product. It's zeolite. Cliniptia and marine plasma, only those two elements. But then how it's been smashed down in vortex into a nano size, it goes into our bodies and it removes all forever chemicals. This is your plastics, heavy metals that have been in our body for a very long time, all naturally, powerfully, everything from arsenic, aluminum, mercury, but the big one is graphene oxide. And I don't know how much your listeners are aware of graphene oxide that's been sprayed all over the world. It's been put in these injections, right? This is what they're using to get control of our bodies. This is the thing that's going up. People don't realize, the wireless area network means it's that they've been using our bodies as wireless area networks. They're using our bodies as a through port for connectivity for wireless. And you can find all this. There's a great woman in the United States called Sabrina Wallace. She's drilled down it. She's laid out showing everybody what Cisco and all these big tech companies have been rolling out. People don't understand that, right? And that's what I'm saying. Wideband, wireless area body network, WABN. I never thought of that. The B body, that's what they've been using. So this is why when the injections and this is a conspiracy theory, this is why the injections that people have been given, that's why you should never take a vaccine ever. What's in these injections is graphene oxide, and this is what's used for them to connect to our bodies and support all these structures that are being formed in our body. Look up Dr. David Nixon out of Australia. He's done an incredible job drilling down, showing you what's developing in these vaccines when they leave them on the counter once they become room temperature. And this is all this massive clotting and people dying. That's why we're seeing all these sports people dying. One of the, on my website, on BitChute, one of the top videos, I can't say his name correctly. He had a team of 10 people. They got like $15 million through this research many, many years ago. He was the first one to uncover that in these injections, they had like these little like razor blades, the simplest way to explain it. And he says, and once your heart rate goes up and the blood is really pumping through your body, it's going around and it's slicing all your arteries. This is why we're seeing all these sports figures dying on the fields worldwide, right? So it's a huge thing that we've got going on here. It's genocide.